"You're pathetic and embarrassing." That's what my daughter-in-law Jasmine said about me to her teaching colleagues at Carson Elementary's appreciation dinner. I was standing in the hallway outside the cafeteria when I heard her voice carrying through the open door. "Kenneth's mom?" "Oh, she used to work cafeteria at Harold Washington Elementary. You know how those lunch ladies are. Sweet but limited. We help her out financially since she never really built anything for herself." 30 teachers went quiet. I stood there frozen, my hand on the door handle, listening to my son's wife rewrite history in front of the people who should have known better. The same cafeteria where I'd spent 35 years feeding children. The same profession I'd been proud of my entire working life, and she was reducing me to nothing. But what Jasmine didn't know, what she'd conveniently forgotten in the 2 years since my husband Robert died, was exactly how much I'd built, and exactly how much I'd sacrificed to save her career when she'd almost lost everything. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because this story is about what happens when the person you save forgets they ever needed saving. When your generosity becomes invisible and your sacrifice becomes a joke. This is about a daughter-in-law who took everything and gave back nothing but contempt. Let me take you back to who I am before I tell you what I did next. My name is Veronica Daly, and I'm 64 years old. I live in the same house in Chatham where my husband Robert and I raised our son Kenneth. We bought this house in 1985 when Kenneth was born. 3 bedrooms, front porch, small backyard where Robert planted tomatoes every spring. We paid it off in 2010. Biggest accomplishment of our lives. Robert drove buses for the Chicago Transit Authority for 38 years. I managed the cafeteria at Harold Washington Elementary for 35 years. We weren't rich, but we were proud. We worked hard. We saved money. We built something. Robert died 2 years ago. August 2022. Massive stroke. He was 66 years old. Collapsed in our kitchen on a Sunday morning while making coffee. Gone before the ambulance arrived. The grief nearly destroyed me. 41 years of marriage, gone in an instant. The house felt too big, too quiet, too full of memories. Every room had Robert in it, his coffee cup still in the cabinet, his reading glasses on the nightstand, the porch where we used to sit together every evening, empty now except for me. Kenneth was wonderful after his father died. He came by every day for months. Brought the grandchildren, let me cry on his shoulder, made sure I was eating, made sure I wasn't alone too much. That's who my son is, a good man, gentle, kind, loving. But Kenneth married Jasmine Cooper 8 years ago, and Jasmine has never been comfortable with where she came from or where Kenneth came from. Jasmine grew up in Hyde Park. Her father's a postal supervisor, her mother's a nurse, middle-class family, college educated. She went to DePaul University, got her teaching degree, became a 3rd-grade teacher at Carson Elementary. Good school, good neighborhood, professional environment. And from the moment I met Jasmine, I could tell she was embarrassed by us. Not by Kenneth exactly. Kenneth has a good job as an account manager at a logistics company, makes decent money, but by me and Robert. By the fact that Robert drove buses, by the fact that I worked in a school cafeteria, by our working-class roots. She never said it directly, but it was there in how she introduced us to her family. This is Kenneth's parents. They're retired now. Brief. Minimal. Moving on quickly to other topics. It was there in how she talked about her own parents. My father supervises 40 people at the post office. My mother manages an entire hospital floor, emphasis on management, on supervision, on professional titles. Robert noticed it too. We talked about it sometimes, late at night after family dinners that felt strained. "She's ashamed of us," Robert would say. "Give her time," I'd answer. "She'll come around. She loves Kenneth. She'll learn to love us too." But Robert was right. Jasmine was ashamed. And after Robert died, After I was alone and vulnerable and grieving, that shame turned into something worse. It turned into contempt. The twins, Caleb and Zoe, are 6 years old now. First graders, beautiful children, smart and funny and full of energy. I used to see them every week, Sunday dinners at my house after church, sleepovers on Friday nights, helping me bake cookies, playing in the backyard where their grandfather had planted those tomatoes. After Robert died, those visits became my lifeline, the only thing that kept me going through the grief. Caleb telling me about his science project, Zoe showing me her artwork, their laughter filling the silent house. But gradually, over the past 2 years, Jasmine started pulling them away. Veronica's parenting style is too old-fashioned, she told Kenneth. She's too strict with them, makes them eat vegetables they don't like, makes them say grace before meals, takes them to church every Sunday. It's confusing for the children to have different rules at Grandma's house. Too strict, too old-fashioned, too much church. All the things that made me who I am, all the values Robert and I had raised Kenneth with, suddenly weren't good enough for our grandchildren. Sunday dinners became once a month, then every other month, then nothing at all. Phone calls went unanswered. When I called Kenneth's cell, Jasmine would pick up. "Veronica, the children are busy with homework right now. Veronica, we're having family time. Maybe call back next week. Veronica, the kids are tired. Let's plan something another time." Another time never came. I'd see photos on Kenneth's social media. The twins at the park, at birthday parties, at family gatherings, living their lives without me, growing up without their grandmother. And every time I asked Kenneth about it, he'd make excuses. "Mom, you know how busy we are. Mom, the kids have so many activities now. Mom, Jasmine just wants what's best for them." My son, the gentle, kind man who'd held me while I cried for his father, had chosen his wife's comfort over his mother's heartbreak. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was listening to Jasmine tell her colleagues that I'd never built anything, that she helped me financially, that I was limited. When the truth was, I'd given her everything. To understand what Jasmine said at that dinner, you need to understand what happened 3 years ago. You need to understand what I gave up to save her. It was April 2021. I'd been retired for 6 years. Robert had been retired for 7. We were enjoying our life, traveling a little, spending time with the grandchildren, living on our pensions and Social Security, comfortable. Kenneth called me on a Tuesday evening. His voice was shaking. "Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over?" I drove to their house in Auburn Gresham. Kenneth met me at the door. His eyes were red. He looked like he hadn't slept. Inside, Jasmine sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. When she looked up at me, her face was destroyed. "Tell her," Kenneth said. Jasmine started crying. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and I'm going to lose everything." "What happened?" "Last year, my principal was obsessed with test scores. Our school rating was dropping. She kept pressuring all the third-grade teachers, saying we needed to get scores up or the school would face consequences, funding cuts, staff reductions. She made it clear our jobs were on the line." Jasmine's hands were shaking. "I had 6 students who were failing badly. I worked with them. I really did. Stayed after school, extra tutoring, but they just weren't ready. When the standardized tests came, they failed." "So what did you do?" "I changed their scores." Jasmine whispered it like a confession. "After the tests were graded, I went into the system and changed 6 failing scores to passing. Just barely passing. I thought no one would notice. I thought it would save my job." "Oh, Jasmine." "Someone noticed. Someone filed an anonymous complaint with Chicago Public Schools. They investigated. They found the changes. They tracked them back to my login credentials. Now CPS is charging me with falsifying educational records. They're recommending my teaching license be permanently revoked. and there might be criminal charges. Criminal charges? Kenneth answered. The investigators said falsifying official documents is a crime. She could face prosecution. Even if she avoids jail time, she'll definitely lose her teaching license. She'll never teach again. Jasmine looked at me with desperate eyes. Veronica, I know I messed up. I know it was wrong, but I panicked. I was terrified of losing my job. And now I'm going to lose everything. My career, my license, possibly my freedom. What am I going to do? I looked at my daughter-in-law, at this woman who'd been ashamed of me from the day we met, who'd never fully accepted me or Robert into her life, who'd kept us at arm's length because we weren't professional enough, educated enough, polished enough for her Hyde Park sensibilities. And I looked at my son, at Kenneth's devastated face, at the fear in his eyes. This wasn't about Jasmine. This was about my son's life falling apart. This was about my grandchildren growing up with their mother in prison, or disgraced. This was about my family. What do you need? I asked. Kenneth pulled out papers. I talked to a lawyer, Gerald Murphy. He specializes in education law. He thinks he can negotiate with CPS, get the charges reduced, maybe save Jasmine's license. But it's going to cost money. A lot of money. How much? He quoted us $35,000 for his retainer and estimated fees. And Jasmine's been suspended without pay, pending the investigation. That could take months. We can't make our mortgage without her income. We'll lose the house. I did the math in my head. $35,000 for the lawyer, at least 9 months of Jasmine's salary. That was another $27,000 in lost income they'd need covered. $62 total. I had exactly $62,000 in savings. Every penny Robert and I had saved over 35 years of working. Money we'd set aside for emergencies, for medical expenses, for helping Kenneth if he ever needed it, for the grandchildren's education someday. Our entire financial security beyond the house. I'll pay for it, I said. Kenneth's head snapped up. Mom, no, that's your savings. That's everything you have. It's family money. Family helps family. Robert would want me to do this. Jasmine was crying harder now. Veronica, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. But Jasmine, you need to understand something. What you did was wrong. You can't ever do something like this again. You understand me? She nodded. I know. I'm so sorry. I'll pay you back. I swear. We'll figure that out later. Right now, we save your career and keep this family together. The next day, I went to the bank and withdrew $62,000, 35 years of cafeteria manager paychecks, saved dollar by dollar, gone in one transaction. I gave $35,000 to Gerald Murphy. He went to work immediately, negotiating with CPS, arguing that Jasmine had acted under pressure, that she had an otherwise spotless record, that she'd shown immediate remorse, that losing her license permanently was too harsh a penalty for a first offense. The other $27,000 I gave to Kenneth in installments over 9 months, covering the shortfall from Jasmine's lost salary, making sure they didn't lose their house, making sure the grandchildren had stability. It took until December 2021, 9 months of legal negotiations. But Gerald Murphy pulled it off. The criminal charges were dropped. CPS agreed to let Jasmine keep her teaching license but placed her on probation for 3 years. She could return to teaching in January 2022. When it was over, Jasmine hugged me, sobbed on my shoulder. Veronica, thank you. Thank you so much. I'll never forget this. I'll pay you back. I promise. Kenneth hugged me too. Mom, I don't know how to thank you. You saved us. You saved our family. That's what mothers do, I said. We protect our children. Robert died 8 months later, August 2022. I never told him I'd given away all our savings. I couldn't bear to worry him in his final months. He died thinking we still had that cushion, that security. After the funeral, after the grief settled into daily emptiness, I realized what I'd done. I'd given away everything Robert and I had built. I was 62 years old, living on $2,830 a month, with no savings, no emergency fund, no cushion. But I'd saved my family. I'd kept Jasmine out of prison. I'd protected Kenneth's marriage. I'd given my grandchildren a future with both parents. That should have been enough. It should have meant something. But at Carson Elementary's appreciation dinner, listening to Jasmine tell 30 teachers that I'd never built anything, that I needed her financial help, I realized something horrible. My sacrifice hadn't meant anything to Jasmine at all. She'd taken everything and learned nothing. The isolation didn't happen all at once. That's what made it so insidious. Jasmine was too smart to suddenly cut me off. That would have looked cruel. Instead, she did it gradually. So gradually that Kenneth didn't even notice it was happening. It started about 6 months after Robert's funeral. February 2023. I was still deep in grief. Still learning how to live alone in a house meant for 2 people. The grandchildren were my lifeline. Caleb and Zoe were 4 years old then. Their visits were the only thing that gave me purpose. I'd had them every Sunday after church. It was our routine. I'd pick them up, bring them to my house, make lunch, spend the afternoon together, read them stories, play games, let them help me bake cookies just like I'd done with Kenneth when he was their age. But one Sunday in February, Kenneth called, "Mom, we can't do today. Jasmine has a migraine. She needs quiet." Of course. Tell her I hope she feels better. Next Sunday? Yeah, probably. I'll call you. He didn't call. When I called him the following Saturday, Jasmine answered. "Veronica, Kenneth's running errands with the kids. Can he call you back? Just wanted to confirm tomorrow. The usual time?" "Actually, Veronica, we need to talk about the Sunday visits. Kenneth's been meaning to call you. The kids have been having some issues lately. They're having trouble with transitions, going back and forth between houses. Their pediatrician thinks it might be better to keep their routine more consistent." "More consistent? I've been seeing them every Sunday since they were born." "I know. But they're getting older now. They need more structure. And honestly, Veronica, some of your parenting approaches are confusing for them." "My parenting approaches?" "You're very strict, making them finish all their vegetables, making them say grace before meals, taking them to church every week. We're trying to raise them with more flexibility. Let them make their own choices about food and religion. Jasmine, they're 4 years old. They need guidance. They need consistency, Veronica. And right now, having different rules at your house versus our house is causing problems. We think it's better if we scale back the visits for a while, maybe once a month instead of every week." "Once a month? Just until they adjust. We'll call you to set something up." She hung up. I sat holding the phone, feeling like I'd been slapped. Too strict, too old-fashioned, making them say grace, taking them to church. These were the values Robert and I had raised Kenneth with, the same values that had made Kenneth the good man he was. And now they weren't good enough for my grandchildren. The once-a-month visits became sporadic. March came and went with no call. In April, I finally called Kenneth directly. "Son, it's been 2 months. When can I see the kids?" "Mom, I know. I'm sorry. We've just been so busy. Jasmine's back at work full-time. The kids have activities now. Soccer, music classes. It's hard to coordinate. I'm not asking for a whole day, just an afternoon, a few hours. Let me talk to Jasmine. We'll figure something out." But nothing got figured out. When I called again in May, Jasmine's excuses had evolved. "Veronica, I don't think you realize how exhausting it is for us right now, working full-time, managing 2 4-year-olds. We barely have time for ourselves. The weekends are for family time. Just the four of us. The kids need that bonding with their parents. I'm their grandmother. I'm family too. Of course you are. But you have to understand, Veronica. You raised your child. Now it's our turn to raise ours. Without interference. Interference. Wanting to see my grandchildren was interference. By summer 2023, I'd seen Caleb and Zoe twice in 6 months. Both times were brief. Awkward supervised visits where Jasmine watched every interaction, correcting me when I asked the kids to wash their hands before eating, telling me I didn't need to make them clean up their toys. Your house, your rules, Veronica, but we don't force those behaviors at home. We prefer positive reinforcement over strict discipline. There was no discipline involved, just basic manners, the same manners I'd taught Kenneth. But Jasmine made it sound like I was running a military camp. The phone calls got worse too. I'd call to talk to the kids. Jasmine would answer every time. They're doing homework right now, Veronica. They're having dinner. Can you call back another time? They're tired tonight. Maybe tomorrow? Tomorrow never came. When I did get Kenneth on the phone, he sounded exhausted. Mom, I know it's hard. But Jasmine's right. The kids need consistency. And with her work schedule and everything we've got going on, it's just easier if we keep weekends simple. Easier. It was easier to cut me out. Kenneth, I saved her career. I gave everything I had. And now she won't even let me see my grandchildren? Mom, don't make this about the money. That's separate. This is about what's best for Caleb and Zoe. But it wasn't separate. I could hear it in how Jasmine talked about me now, the subtle condescension, the way she'd mention my financial situation to Kenneth in front of me. Your mother really should think about downsizing. That house is too big for one person. The utilities alone must be eating up her Social Security. Maybe she could move closer to that senior community near the highway. Those apartments are very affordable. Kenneth, does your mother have enough money for groceries this month? I noticed her refrigerator looked kind of empty last time. My refrigerator looked empty because I'd just cleaned it. But Jasmine had seized on it as evidence that I was struggling, that I needed their help, that I was a burden. The grandmother who'd given them $62,000 was now the poor old woman they had to worry about. By 2024, I'd been essentially cut off. I saw the kids maybe 3 times that entire year, always briefly, always supervised, always with Jasmine controlling every moment. And Kenneth let it happen, my gentle, kind son who'd cried on my shoulder after his father died, who I'd saved from financial ruin, who owed me everything. He chose peace with his wife over loyalty to his mother. I stopped calling as much. What was the point? Every call ended in rejection. Every attempt at connection was blocked. I'd lie awake at night in the house Robert and I had built, thinking about Caleb and Zoe growing up without me, missing milestones, missing their childhood, being erased from their lives because Jasmine had decided I wasn't good enough. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? Jasmine had convinced Kenneth it was all for the best. The financial humiliation was almost worse than the isolation. Because Jasmine wasn't content with just cutting me off from the grandchildren, she needed to rewrite history. She needed to make me small in everyone's eyes. It started with subtle comments at family gatherings, the few times I was still invited. Veronica's doing okay on her own, Jasmine would tell people. We check in on her regularly, make sure she has what she needs. You know how hard it is for seniors on fixed incomes. Fixed income. Like I was destitute, like I needed their charity. I was living on $2,830 a month between Social Security and Robert's pension. It wasn't luxury, but it was enough. I paid my bills. I kept my house. I managed just fine. But Jasmine painted a different picture. We help her with groceries sometimes. She'd tell her parents during holiday dinners. And we're keeping an eye on the house. Some of the repairs are getting beyond what she can handle financially. There were no repairs beyond what I could handle. I'd had the furnace serviced. I'd fixed a leaky faucet, normal homeowner maintenance. But Jasmine made it sound like my house was falling apart and I was too poor to fix it. Kenneth would sit there saying nothing, not correcting her, not defending me, just nodding along like, yes, we're such good children, taking care of poor Veronica. The worst incident happened at Jasmine's parents' house last Thanksgiving, 2023. Her father, Frank, was talking about retirement planning. Her mother, Diane, was bragging about their 401k. We were very strategic about saving, Diane said. Started early, invested wisely. That's why we're comfortable now. Jasmine jumped in. I wish more people understood the importance of financial planning. She glanced at me. Some people work their whole lives and still end up with nothing to show for it. Frank nodded. That's the tragedy of low-wage work. No real opportunity to build wealth. Low-wage work. I'd been a cafeteria manager. I'd made $45,000 a year by the time I retired. Not rich, but not poverty either. Robert had made good union wages driving for CTA. We'd paid off our house. We'd raised our son. We'd saved $62,000. We'd built something. But sitting at that table, listening to Jasmine and her parents discuss financial planning like I was too stupid to understand money, I felt invisible. Kenneth, you're doing well though, Frank said. Account manager at a solid company. And Jasmine's teaching salary is respectable. You two are building real security. We try, Jasmine said. We learned from watching both success and failure. She looked at me again. Seeing what not to do is just as valuable as seeing what to do. What not to do, I was the cautionary tale, the example of failure. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried. When I came back, Diane was showing off photos from their cruise to Alaska. We saved for 3 years to take this trip, she said, but it was worth it. You have to prioritize experiences. Jasmine nodded enthusiastically. That's what we're trying to teach Caleb and Zoe. The value of planning ahead, working toward goals. She paused. Unlike previous generations who just lived paycheck to paycheck. Previous generations. She meant me. She meant Robert. The man who'd worked 38 years driving buses to provide for his family. Who'd never missed a day's work. Who'd paid off his house and died with dignity. Jasmine had reduced him to someone who lived paycheck to paycheck. Someone with no vision, no planning, no worth. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Jasmine, Robert and I paid off our house 15 years ago. We saved consistently. We built equity. We weren't paycheck to paycheck. Jasmine's smile was patronizing. Of course, Veronica. I didn't mean it as criticism, just different approaches to money. But she did mean it as criticism. Everything she said was designed to diminish me, to make me smaller, to make herself look better by comparison. The comments continued through 2024. Kenneth would mention in passing that I'd needed to skip a dental appointment. Jasmine would immediately tell people, Veronica's struggling with medical expenses. It's so hard for seniors. We're trying to help, but there's only so much we can do on our salaries. I'd skipped one dentist appointment because I didn't want to spend $300 on a cleaning that month. I had the money. I just chose to wait. But Jasmine turned it into evidence of poverty. When I bought Caleb and Zoe birthday presents in June, modest gifts from Target, Jasmine returned them. Veronica, you really shouldn't be spending money you don't have on gifts. Save your money for things you need. They were $25 each. I could afford $25. But Jasmine needed me to be poor. She needed me to be the struggling senior they were heroically supporting. Because if I wasn't poor, if I was actually doing fine, then what excuse did she have for cutting me off? The grandchildren started asking questions. I'd hear them when I did get brief supervised visits. Mommy says Grandma Veronica doesn't have much money, Zoe said once. Is that true, Grandma? I have enough, sweetheart. Grandma's doing just fine. But Mommy says we shouldn't ask you for things because you can't afford it. You can always ask Grandma for anything. That's what grandmas are for. Later, I heard Jasmine correcting her. Zoe, we talked about this. Grandma Veronica is on a tight budget. We don't want to make her feel bad by asking for things. She was teaching my granddaughter to pity me. Caleb, who was 6 now and starting to understand money, asked Kenneth during one visit, Dad, why doesn't Grandma Veronica have money like Grandma Diane? Different people have different circumstances, Kenneth answered. Grandma Veronica worked in a cafeteria. It didn't pay as much as other jobs. A cafeteria. Like it was shameful. Like the 35 years I'd spent feeding children, managing staff, running a kitchen, meant nothing. I'd fed kids who came to school hungry. I'd made sure they had something nutritious to eat. I'd known which children needed extra helpings because their families were struggling. I'd packed food for them to take home on weekends. I'd mattered. My work had mattered. But to Jasmine, I was just a cafeteria lady. Limited, poor. Someone to be pitied and helped and kept at arm's length. And Kenneth let her say it. My son, who I'd raised, who I'd sacrificed everything to save from financial ruin, sat quietly while his wife taught his children that their grandmother was a failure. That was what I was thinking about when I stood outside Carson Elementary's appreciation dinner in November 2024. That was the context when I heard Jasmine tell 30 teachers that I'd never built anything, that she helped me financially because I was too limited to help myself. And that's when I decided it was time everyone learned the truth. I'd been invited to the teacher appreciation dinner by accident. That's the irony. Jasmine hadn't meant for me to be there at all. The invitation came through Kenneth. Carson Elementary was hosting an appreciation dinner in November for Teacher Appreciation Week. Teachers could bring family members. Kenneth mentioned it casually 2 weeks before. Mom, Jasmine has this work thing. Dinner for teachers and their families. It's on a Friday night. Are you going? Yeah, I should probably go. Support her career and all that. Can I come? He hesitated. I mean it's mostly for spouses and kids, not really a grandparent thing. The invitation said family, Kenneth. I'd like to support Jasmine too. After everything. I shouldn't have added that last part. After everything, after I'd saved her career, after I'd given her $62,000. But I did add it. Kenneth heard the edge in my voice. Let me ask her. When he called back 2 days later, his voice was tight. Jasmine says you can come. But Mom, it's a professional event. Her colleagues will be there, her principal. Just, be aware of that. Be aware, code for don't embarrass her. I wore my best dress. Navy blue with a modest neckline. Pearl earrings Robert had given me for our 30th anniversary. Church shoes. I looked respectable, dignified. Kenneth picked me up at 6. Jasmine was already at the school setting up. She's on the planning committee, Kenneth explained. Had to get there early. The dinner was in Carson Elementary's cafeteria. Ironic, considering what Jasmine had said about cafeteria workers. Long tables set up in rows. About 60 people total. Teachers, spouses, some older children, a few administrators. I spotted Jasmine immediately. She was at a table near the front with 5 other teachers, all women around her age, all dressed professionally, all laughing about something. When she saw me walk in with Kenneth, her smile froze. Just for a second. Then it was back. But I'd seen that flash of displeasure. Veronica, she said, her voice overly bright. I didn't know you were coming. Kenneth said family was welcome. I wanted to support you. Of course. How nice. She gestured vaguely toward the back. There are open seats near the kitchen if you want to sit there. Kenneth and I will be at the committee table up front. Near the kitchen. Away from her colleagues. Hidden. Actually, there's room at our table, one of the other teachers said. Older woman, kind face. Patricia Chen, second grade teacher. We'd love to have Kenneth's mom join us. Jasmine's jaw tightened. Oh well, if you're sure there's room. Saturday, Patricia introduced me to the other teachers. They were warm, welcoming, asked about my work history, seemed genuinely interested when I mentioned I'd been a cafeteria manager for 35 years. That's such important work, Patricia said. We see every day how crucial nutrition is for learning. Our cafeteria manager, Linda, is a treasure. I don't know what we'd do without her. I smiled. It's underappreciated work, but it matters. Dinner was served. Chicken, rice, salad. I ate quietly, listening to the teachers talk. School gossip, difficult parents, curriculum changes, normal workplace conversation. Jasmine kept glancing over at our table, checking on me, making sure I wasn't saying anything embarrassing. About halfway through dinner, I needed to use the restroom. I excused myself, walked down the hallway toward the bathrooms near the main office. That's when I heard Jasmine's voice carrying from the cafeteria. The door hadn't closed all the way behind me. Sound traveled. She was talking to her table, louder than she probably realized. So Kenneth's mom came tonight, one of the teachers said. Patricia mentioned she used to work in cafeteria management. Oh, Jasmine said. Yes, that's Veronica, Kenneth's mom. She seems lovely, another teacher said. Patricia said she worked at Harold Washington Elementary. Jasmine laughed. That uncomfortable laugh people make when they're embarrassed. Yeah, she worked cafeteria there for years. You know how those lunch ladies are. Sweet but, well, limited. Limited. I stood frozen in the hallway. What do you mean? Someone asked. Jasmine lowered her voice slightly, but not enough. I mean, she's never really understood professional environments. Kenneth and I actually help her out financially quite a bit. She's on Social Security now. Never really built anything for herself, you know? Spent her whole life in that cafeteria and ended up with nothing. My hand gripped the wall. My vision blurred. That's sad, someone said. At least she has you and Kenneth to help her. We do what we can, Jasmine said. But honestly, it's hard sometimes. She has these old-fashioned ideas about child rearing, very strict, kind of harsh with the kids. We've had to limit her time with Caleb and Zoe because her approach is just so outdated. Well, you know best for your children. Exactly. We're trying to raise them with more progressive values. Veronica means well, but she's from a different generation, different economic class too, honestly. She doesn't really understand our lifestyle or our goals. Our lifestyle, our goals. Like I was so far beneath them I couldn't comprehend their elevated existence. I stood in that hallway listening to my daughter-in-law erase me, erase my 35 years of work, erase my marriage, erase my sacrifice, erase everything I was. And reduce me to a limited, poor, old woman who needed their charity. 30 teachers were hearing this. Her colleagues, her principal, who was sitting at the head table. All of them were getting Jasmine's version of who I was. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew what I'd given up to save her. I walked to the bathroom, washed my face, looked at myself in the mirror. This was the moment. I could go back, sit down, finish dinner, go home. Pretend I hadn't heard anything. Keep the peace. Like I'd been doing for 3 years. Or I could tell the truth. I opened my purse. Inside was the folder I'd brought. Just in case. I hadn't planned to use it. But something had told me to bring it. Bank statements from 2021, showing the $62,000 withdrawal, legal bills from Gerald Murphy totaling $35,000. The letter from Chicago Public Schools reinstating Jasmine's teaching license after the investigation. Payment receipts showing the money I'd given Kenneth to cover 9 months of Jasmine's lost salary. Everything documented, everything proven. I walked back into the cafeteria. My hands weren't shaking. My voice was steady. Jasmine was still talking, still explaining to her colleagues how difficult it was to help poor Veronica, how challenging it was to have a mother-in-law who didn't understand professional life. I walked straight to her table, stood there until she noticed me. The conversation stopped. All 6 teachers looked up at me. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "Jasmine, I need to say something." "Veronica, this isn't really the time." "No, I think it is the time. Because you just told 30 people that I never built anything, that you helped me financially, that I'm limited." Jasmine's face went pale. "I didn't. You misunderstood. I heard every word, from the hallway. And I think everyone here deserves to know the truth about our relationship." I opened the folder, pulled out the bank statement dated the 15th of April 2021. 3 years ago, Jasmine falsified student test scores. She was facing permanent license revocation and possible criminal charges. I withdrew $62,000, my entire life savings, to pay for her legal defense and support her family while she was suspended for 9 months. I placed the documents on the table: the legal bills, the CPS letter, the payment receipts. $35,000 to Gerald Murphy for legal fees, $27,000 to Kenneth to cover their mortgage and bills, while Jasmine had no income. Every penny my husband Robert and I saved over 35 years of working, gone to save her career. The table was silent. Patricia's mouth was open. The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, had walked over from the head table. "And for 3 years, I've lived on Social Security and a pension while Jasmine told everyone I needed her help, while she isolated me from my grandchildren, while she convinced my son that I was too limited, too poor, too old-fashioned to be part of their lives." Jasmine started crying. "Veronica, please. You told them I never built anything. I built enough to save you when you almost destroyed yourself, and you've taken that sacrifice and used it as evidence of my failure." The cafeteria had gone completely silent. 60 people watching. Mrs. Rodriguez picked up the CPS letter. "Read it." Looked at Jasmine with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Is this true, Jasmine?" Jasmine couldn't speak. She just nodded. "And Mrs. Daly paid for your legal defense?" Another nod. "I see." Mrs. Rodriguez set down the letter carefully. "I think we need to have a conversation in my office, Monday morning." I looked at Jasmine one more time. Her mascara was running. Her colleagues were staring at her with shock and disgust. Then I looked at Kenneth. He was standing now, his face drained of color. "Mom," he started. "Kenneth, take me home, please." We walked out together in silence. Kenneth didn't speak during the drive home. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. When we pulled up to my house, he turned off the engine but didn't move. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" "That you gave Jasmine everything. That $62,000 was your entire savings. You said you had money set aside. You never said it was everything." I looked at my son. At this man I'd raised to be kind and gentle, who'd become so afraid of conflict that he'd let his wife erase his mother. Would it have mattered? Of course it would have mattered. Would it? Because you knew I helped. You knew I paid for the lawyer. You knew I covered your bills for 9 months. And you still let Jasmine treat me like a charity case. Kenneth flinched. I didn't know she was saying those things. About you never building anything. About helping you financially. I didn't know. You never asked. For 3 years, you never once asked how I was doing, how I was managing, whether I needed anything. You just accepted Jasmine's version of reality. His eyes filled with tears. I was trying to keep the peace. Jasmine was stressed, working full-time, managing the kids. I didn't want to add more conflict. So you sacrificed me for peace. Your mother, who gave up everything to save your wife's career. I was expendable as long as your home was calm. That's not fair. Isn't it, Kenneth? When was the last time you called just to check on me? Not because you needed something, not because you were making an obligatory visit, but because you wanted to hear your mother's voice? He couldn't answer. When was the last time you stood up for me when Jasmine made one of her comments? When she suggested I should move to that senior community an hour away? When she told the kids I was too poor to buy them gifts? When she said I confused them with my old-fashioned parenting? Still silence. You chose her comfort over my dignity. Every single time. And I let you because I thought that's what mothers do. We sacrifice. We stay quiet. We make peace. I was wrong. Mom, I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you sorry you got caught? Sorry your colleagues saw the truth? Sorry your professional reputation is damaged? He shook his head. I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry I let her treat you that way. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. The tears were streaming down his face now. My grown son, crying in the driveway of the house where he'd grown up. Your father would be ashamed, I said quietly. Robert would never have let anyone treat me the way Jasmine did, even his own wife. Especially his own wife. I know, Kenneth's voice broke. Dad would have stopped it the first time. He wouldn't have made excuses. No, he wouldn't have. What do I do now? That's up to you. But Kenneth, you need to understand something. Your marriage might not survive this. Jasmine's colleagues know the truth now. Her principal knows. That's going to have consequences at her job. She's going to be angry and embarrassed, and she's going to blame me. Maybe blame you for bringing me tonight. And you're going to have to decide who you stand with. I stand with you. I should have always stood with you. Words are easy, son. Actions are what matter. Your father taught you that. I know. Mom, can I ask you something? What? Do you regret it? Giving her the money? Saving her career? I thought about that. About the $62,000. About the 3 years of isolation and humiliation. About everything I'd lost. I don't regret saving someone from destroying their life. But I regret that Jasmine learned nothing from being saved. I regret that she took my sacrifice and used it as evidence of my worthlessness. I regret that you let her. I won't let her anymore. I promise you that. Good, now go home. Go talk to your wife. Figure out what kind of man you want to be. He hugged me before he left. A real hug. The kind I hadn't gotten from him in 3 years. After he drove away, I walked into my empty house, turned on the lights, made a cup of tea. My phone rang 20 minutes later. It was Patricia Chen, the second-grade teacher from dinner. Mrs. Daly, I hope you don't mind me calling. Kenneth gave me your number. I just wanted to say that what you did tonight took incredible courage. Thank you, Patricia. And I want you to know that several of us have been uncomfortable with how Jasmine talks about people, about support staff, about cafeteria workers, about anyone she considers beneath her professionally. What you revealed tonight explained a lot about her character. I appreciate that. Mrs. Rodriguez is very serious about integrity. The fact that Jasmine lied about her disciplinary record and that she's been disparaging the person who saved her career, that's not going to sit well. There will be consequences. That's between Jasmine and her principal. I just wanted the truth known. Well, it's known now. And Mrs. Daly? Those of us who've worked with cafeteria staff know how essential you are, how hard you work, how much you care about the children. What you did for 35 years mattered. I started crying. Thank you. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. After we hung up, I sat in Robert's chair by the window. The same chair where he used to read the newspaper every morning, where we'd sit together in the evenings, talking about our day. Robert, I said to the empty room, I finally stood up for myself, like you always told me to. I hope you're proud. The house was quiet, but for the first time in 3 years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace. Kenneth called the next morning, Saturday, 9 a.m. I was having coffee on the back porch, wrapped in Robert's old cardigan, watching the November wind strip the last leaves from the trees. "Mom, we need to talk. Can I come over?" "Of course." He arrived 30 minutes later. Alone. He looked like he hadn't slept. Eyes red, face drawn, shoulders slumped. I made him coffee. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd told him I'd pay for Jasmine's lawyer 3 years ago. "Where's Jasmine?" "At home with the kids. We've been up all night talking, arguing mostly. Mom, she's devastated." "As she should be. She says you humiliated her in front of her entire professional community, that you destroyed her reputation, that everyone at school will treat her differently now." I took a sip of coffee. Should I have kept quiet? Let her continue telling everyone I'm a poor, limited old woman who needs her charity. No. No. You were right to speak up. I'm not defending what she said. But Mom, the consequences are going to be severe. Tell me. Mrs. Rodriguez called her this morning. There's going to be a formal meeting Monday. Jasmine's probation from the 2021 incident was supposed to be confidential. But by lying about it to colleagues, by claiming she had no disciplinary history, she violated the terms of her probation. What does that mean? It means her teaching license could be revoked after all, 3 years later, because she couldn't stop herself from lying about it. I felt a twist in my stomach. Kenneth, I didn't reveal that information to get her fired. I know, but the truth has consequences, and Jasmine is facing all of them now. What about you two? Your marriage? He ran his hands over his face. Honestly? I don't know. We've been together 8 years. We have 2 kids. But Mom, last night, arguing with her, I realized something. She's not the person I thought she was. What do you mean? When I married Jasmine, I thought she was ambitious but kind, professional but caring. I admired her dedication to teaching, her commitment to her students. But over the past 3 years, I've watched her become someone else. Someone who measures people's worth by their income and education. Someone who treats service workers with contempt. Someone who took the most generous gift anyone has ever given her and turned it into a weapon against you. You're just realizing this now? I didn't want to see it, because seeing it would have meant admitting I married someone who could treat my mother that way. It would have meant choosing between her and you. I chose wrong, Mom. For 3 years, I chose wrong. The phone rang. Kenneth glanced at it. That's Jasmine. 5th time this morning. She wants me to convince you to fix this, to call Mrs. Rodriguez, and say it was all a misunderstanding. Is that why you're here? No. I'm here because I need to tell you that I'm done making excuses for her. Whatever happens to Jasmine's career, she brought it on herself. And whatever happens to our marriage, that's on her too. What will you do? First, I'm bringing the kids to see you. This afternoon, Jasmine doesn't get to keep them from you anymore. Second, I'm insisting Jasmine pay you back all $62,000, even if it takes 20 years. Third, I'm telling my siblings what happened. Your siblings don't know? I never told them you gave us the money. Jasmine didn't want anyone to know about the incident, so I kept it quiet. But they need to know what you did. What she did. Kenneth had 2 younger sisters, Shanice and Tamara. Both lived out of state. Both had distanced themselves from the family over the years. I hadn't seen them in months. They're going to be angry, I said. They should be. We all should have protected you better. The doorbell rang. Kenneth went to answer it. I heard voices. Then Kenneth came back looking surprised. Mom, it's Mrs. Rodriguez. Jasmine's principal. She wants to talk to you. I walked to the living room. Mrs. Rodriguez stood in my entryway, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater. She looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Daly, I apologize for showing up unannounced. I called, but there was no answer. I was on the back porch. Phone was inside. Please, come in. She sat on my couch, declined my offer of coffee. I'll get straight to the point. What you revealed last night puts me in a very difficult position. Jasmine's 2021 incident was supposed to remain confidential, but she violated her probation terms by misrepresenting her record to colleagues, by claiming she had no disciplinary history when asked about her career. That's a serious breach. I understand. However, I also want you to know something. I've worked in CPS for 23 years. I started as a cafeteria worker at Dunbar High School, worked my way up to teacher, then administrator. So when I heard what Jasmine said about you last night, about cafeteria workers being limited, it struck a personal nerve. I didn't know that. Most people don't. Once you become an administrator, people forget where you came from. But I remember the cafeteria staff who treated me with more respect than some teachers did, who encouraged me to pursue my education, who believed I could be more than what I was. People like me. People exactly like you, Mrs. Daly. And to hear Jasmine disparage that work, while simultaneously covering up the fact that someone from that profession saved her career, that tells me everything I need to know about her character. What happens now? Monday, I meet with Jasmine officially. The school board will review her probation violation. I can't promise outcomes, but I can tell you this: your sacrifice will not go unrecognized, and your dignity will not be dismissed. Not by me, not by my staff. Thank you. After she left, Kenneth looked at me with something like awe. Mom, the principal of Carson Elementary just came to your house to tell you that you matter. Yes, she did. Jasmine's going to lose her job, isn't she? Probably. And son, I'm sorry for that. I truly am. But I'm not sorry for telling the truth. Neither am I. Not anymore. That afternoon, Kenneth brought Caleb and Zoe to my house. The first time in 6 months, I'd seen them without Jasmine hovering. Grandma Veronica! Zoe ran to me, threw her arms around my waist. I missed you so much. I missed you too, baby. Both of you. Caleb hung back, more reserved. He was 6 now, old enough to sense that something was wrong. Dad said we can come visit you every week now. Is that true? It's true. Every Sunday if you want. Just like we used to. Why did we stop? Because grown-ups made mistakes. But we're fixing them now. Kenneth stayed for an hour, then left me alone with the twins. We made cookies, chocolate chip, their favorite. They told me about first grade, about their teacher, Mrs. Patterson, about their friends, about everything I'd missed. Grandma, Zoe asked while we were rolling dough, why was Mommy crying this morning? Sometimes grown-ups cry when things are hard. Is Mommy in trouble? I looked at my granddaughter. At her innocent face covered in flour. She doesn't need to know the details. Not yet. Your mommy made some mistakes. She's learning from them, just like everyone has to sometimes. Caleb, always more perceptive, asked the harder question. Is it our fault that you didn't come see us? Oh, sweetheart, no. Nothing about this is your fault. Grandma loves you more than anything in the world. I never stopped loving you, never stopped wanting to see you. Then why didn't you? Because sometimes adults make things complicated when they should be simple. But that's over now. Grandma's not going anywhere. The next few days brought phone calls I hadn't expected. Kenneth's sisters, Shanice and Tamara, both called within hours of each other. Shanice first, from Atlanta. Mama, Kenneth just told me what happened. What you did for Jasmine, what she did to you. I'm getting on a plane next weekend. You don't need to do that. Yes, I do. We all let you down. I moved to Atlanta and stopped paying attention to what was happening back home. I should have visited more. Should have noticed you were being isolated. I'm sorry, Mama. Then Tamara from Houston. Her voice was angry. Mama, I can't believe Kenneth kept this from us. I can't believe Jasmine treated you that way. Does she know what you are to this family? What you've always been? I think she's learning. Well, she better learn fast. Because if she doesn't make this right, she's going to have to deal with me. My daughters rallied. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my whole family backing me. Not just Kenneth, everyone. Monday morning, Jasmine went to her meeting with Mrs. Rodriguez. I wasn't there, but Kenneth told me later what happened. The school board reviewed her case. The probation violation was clear. She'd explicitly lied about her disciplinary record when questioned by colleagues. She'd disparaged the person who'd saved her career. She'd violated the trust the board had placed in her when they'd allowed her to keep her license in 2021. The decision was swift. Jasmine's teaching license was suspended for 1 year. She could reapply after demonstrating rehabilitation and completing ethics training. Her employment at Carson Elementary was terminated effective immediately. Kenneth called me from his car after the meeting. He'd gone with Jasmine for support. "Mom, it's done." She's devastated, crying so hard she can barely breathe. She's talking about how her career is over, how she'll never teach again, how this is going to follow her forever. How do you feel? Honestly, part of me wants to comfort her. She's my wife, the mother of my children. But another part of me thinks she brought this on herself, that every consequence she's facing is earned. That's the part that's telling you the truth. The hardest part, he said, is knowing that I enabled this. For 3 years, I let her treat you terribly because it was easier than standing up to her. What does that say about me? It says you're human. It says you made mistakes. But Kenneth, you can learn from this. You can be better. That night, Jasmine called me directly. Her voice was hoarse from crying. "Veronica, I need to talk to you. I'm listening. I know you have no reason to forgive me. I know I treated you horribly. I was ungrateful and cruel, and I took your sacrifice for granted. But I'm begging you, please help me fix this. Call the school board, tell them it was a misunderstanding. That you didn't mean to get me fired." "Jasmine, I didn't get you fired. You got yourself fired by lying about your record, by disparaging me publicly, by violating your probation terms. But you could fix it. You have power here." "No. What I have is dignity. Finally. After 3 years of you treating me like I was worthless, I finally stood up for myself. The consequences you're facing are yours to handle. So that's it? You're just going to let my career be destroyed? Your career was destroyed the moment you falsified those test scores in 2021. I saved it then. You repaid me with contempt. I'm not saving you again." She was silent for a long moment. Then, in a small voice, "What do I do now?" "You do what everyone does after they've lost everything. You figure out who you are without the things that defined you. You learn humility, you make amends, and you become someone worthy of the second chance I gave you 3 years ago." "I can't." "Then you won't. But Jasmine, that's your choice, not mine." After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. 4 months later, March 2025, I was sitting on my back porch, watching the early spring sun warm Robert's garden. The daffodils were starting to push through the soil. Signs of life after a long winter. My phone rang. "Kenneth." "Mom, I need to tell you something. Jasmine and I are separating. She's moving back to her parents' house in Hyde Park. We're filing for divorce." "I'm sorry, son." "Don't be." He sounded tired but resolute. "We've been in counseling since November, trying to work through everything, but the truth is, I can't trust her anymore. Every time she says something, I wonder if it's the truth or another version of reality that makes her look better. I can't live like that." "What about the children?" "Joint custody. They'll spend weekends with her, but they'll be with me during the week. Close to you, close to their school. I want them to have stability. And I want them to have their grandmother." That same week, Jasmine came to my house. I hadn't seen her since the dinner in November. She looked different, thinner, older. The confidence that had always defined her was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine humility. "Veronica, can we talk?" I let her in, made tea. We sat at the kitchen table. "I've been working at Target for the past 3 months," she said. "Stocking shelves. Minimum wage. My teaching license is suspended for another 8 months. I'm living with my parents. My marriage is over. I've lost everything. I know, and I deserved it. All of it. What I did to you, how I treated you, it was unforgivable. I took the most generous gift anyone ever gave me, and I used it as evidence of your worthlessness. I'm ashamed of who I was." She pulled out a legal document. "This is a promissory note, $62,000 plus interest calculated at 3%. I can only afford $500 a month right now. At this rate, it'll take me 12 years to pay you back, but I will pay you back every penny." I looked at the document. Professionally prepared, legally binding, payment schedules and interest calculations all spelled out. "Jasmine, I didn't reveal the truth to get money from you. I know, but I'm offering it now because it's the right thing to do. 3 years late, but it's what I should have done in 2021. What will you do when your license is reinstated?" "I don't know if I'll go back to teaching. I need to figure out who I am without that identity, without the professional status I've been hiding behind. Maybe I'll work with kids in a different way. Maybe I'll do something else entirely. But Veronica, I need you to know something." "What?" "I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am asking for the chance to show Caleb and Zoe what it looks like when someone makes terrible mistakes and tries to become better. They need to see their mother take responsibility, even if it takes years. You're their mother. They need you in their life. But Jasmine, you and I will never have the relationship we could have had. You destroyed that. The best we can hope for is polite distance. I understand. And Veronica? Thank you. For saving me in 2021. For speaking the truth in 2024. For teaching me lessons I should have learned a long time ago." After she left, I signed the promissory note, not because I needed the money, but because Jasmine needed to make amends. Needed to understand that actions have consequences and debts must be repaid. These days, my life looks different, better. Caleb and Zoe come every Sunday after church. We bake cookies, read stories, play in the garden where their grandfather used to grow tomatoes. They're learning who I really am, not the limited poor woman their mother described, but their grandmother who worked hard, built something, and stood up for herself when it mattered most. Kenneth and I have rebuilt our relationship, slowly, carefully, with honesty we didn't have before. He brings the kids over for dinner twice a week. We talk about Robert, about mistakes, about being better. Shanice and Tamra visit more often now. Both came for Christmas. We filled the house with family for the first time since Robert died. The emptiness I'd felt for 3 years was gone. And every month, a check arrives from Jasmine, $500, regular as clockwork. Sometimes there's a note, apologizing again, updating me on her life, asking about the kids. I respond politely, but briefly. Some relationships can't be repaired, only managed. Last week, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Patricia Chen, the 2nd grade teacher from that dinner. "Mrs. Daly, how are you?" "I'm well, Patricia. Really well. I'm so glad. You know, what you did that night changed things at our school. Teachers started speaking up about how we talk about support staff, about respecting everyone regardless of their position. You started a conversation we needed to have. I'm glad something good came from it." She squeezed my hand. "You taught us that dignity isn't negotiable. That's a lesson worth learning." This morning I sat in Robert's chair by the window, drinking coffee as the sun came up. The house felt full again, not with people, but with peace. With the knowledge that I'd stood up for myself, that I'd chosen dignity over false peace, that I'd taught my grandchildren what self-respect looks like. "Robert," I said to the quiet room, "it took me 3 years, but I finally did what you always told me to do. I stopped letting people treat me like I was invisible." The daffodils outside swayed in the morning breeze, spring coming after a long, cold winter, new growth after difficult pruning. At 64 years old, I'd learned something essential. Your worth isn't determined by your income or your education or your professional status. It's determined by your character, by how you treat people when you have power over them, by whether you repay generosity with gratitude or with contempt. I'd spent 35 years feeding children, building something meaningful, saving every dollar. And when someone I barely knew needed everything I had, I gave it without hesitation. That wasn't failure, that was strength. And standing up 3 years later, refusing to be erased, demanding dignity, that was strength too. Different kinds of strength, both necessary, both valuable. Jasmine had called me limited, had said I'd built nothing, had reduced my life's work to worthlessness. But I was sitting in a paid-off house in a neighborhood I loved, surrounded by family who respected me, with grandchildren who knew my worth. I'd built everything that mattered, and no one could take that from me again. That is Veronica Daly's story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community come together over these powerful stories about family sacrifice, ungratefulness, and the moment when silence becomes more expensive than speaking up. Real question: if you were Veronica, what would you have done? Would you have given your daughter-in-law $62,000 to save her career? Would you have stayed quiet when she isolated you from your grandchildren? Or would you have spoken up sooner? Tell me in the comments. Hit that like button if this story made you feel something. Share it if you know someone who's made sacrifices that went unrecognized. Someone whose generosity was taken for granted. Someone whose working-class roots are treated as shameful instead of honorable. And subscribe for more raw, real stories about elder marginalization, ungrateful family members, the cost of keeping peace at any price, and what happens when the person you save forgets they ever needed saving. Thanks for watching. Sometimes the people you sacrifice everything for are the ones who'll use that sacrifice against you. Sometimes staying quiet means accepting erasure. Sometimes the person dismissed as limited is the strongest person in the room. And sometimes speaking one truth in front of 30 people changes everything. See you in the next video.